Hey, Rod, I like your new background.
Thanks. It's the Crow Wing River.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
It almost looks like the over in London. There's a river over there that looks a lot like that.
It's kind of foggy in the background. It looks really cool.
That's the way I feel today. It's a little foggy. Not
Rotary
really.
is just what you need.
Yes, it is. No doubt.
Hey, Jennifer, are you guys going to London this year?
No, stupid COVID.
Okay, you're still gonna sit tight.
We are. We're thinking maybe 2022.
Good.
Get vaccinated, and then prices will probably be tripled because there's been so much loss. We should book them now is what we should do.
Rod, do you live on the Crow Wing River?
No, I live northeast of Pine River. We have some acreage over on the Crow Wing River, though, south of Huntersville.
Okay. I'm on it right by the Sylvan Dam now.
I'm a ways
Dave.
north of you.
Huh? What did you say, Jennifer?
I said, you said now. Did you just move?
Oh, we bought some property over there a couple of years ago, and I'm in the process of building.
That's exciting.
Yeah. It's a big project. We're doing a model solar home.
When you say Sylvan Dam, like by the Camp Jim Road, Dave?
Yeah.
That's where I grew up. The farm on the way there, just past Turkey Farms, where I grew up.
Oh, cool. Well, you know all the good party spots then.
The place, and yeah, oh yeah, back in the day. I used to collect kegs and taps when the cops would bust them when I was like 12 years old. Sell them.
Cool.
You were an entrepreneur.
Yeah, early on. There were 3 or 4 places that were very popular for Brainerd cake parties back then. Made it kind of hard to sneak away from my parents.
So you know you're from a small town when one of our party spots in high school was on a gravel road just on a corner. And we'd just start a fire right there on the gravel road.
I think those days are gone, man. The kids would never get away with that now.
No, they're all in the mine pits over in Crosby. So how about French Rapids? Andy, you were from Brainerd. Were you ever out in French Rapids?
No, I don't think French Rapids was probably before my time. I heard the stories.
Yeah, that was my graduation night.
Aaron's Hill.
Did you really in my neck of the woods?
Yeah, go up on that tower. Surprised it never fell off. Yeah, that tower, I wonder where that got recycled into. So,
well, you remember when Mark was in high school, that hill was 100 feet taller. It's weathered down quite a bit since then.
that's true. What did they name the tower up at Pequot? They named it after a politician, didn't they? No.
Yes, but
I don't know.
Is that the Paul? Was that the Paul Teedy one?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Paul Teedy recreation area.
The guy who thought that roundabouts were a sign of creeping European socialism.
Hey, Mike, where did you guys party? Mike Burton.
Well, whoop. We didn't.
Oh, yes, somebody did. See, we were French Rapids. You're not that much older than I am, so I bet you were in French Rapids too.
No, actually, most of the time out in Steamboat Bay at John and Jeff Anderson's parents, Gladys and Lyle. Their house
What's
was,
that?
yeah.
What's the place called on Proper Gull, Mike? They all party, go on boat, Red something, or the old campground on Pillsbury. There's a nickname for that too. We'd party out there once in a while.
Bloody Cove.
Bloody Cove, Bloody Cove.
That was always a good place. And if you could you'd launch your boat at Ernie's, I lived on White Sands, so as a kid, but we had to go to Ernie's, so we'd launch there. And if they have the old saying, if you could get the money up on the bar, he served you.
Except no vodka.
I don't know that story.
Ernie's never served vodka. Ernie Rotary hated the Russians so bad after World War II that his bar was never going to have vodka.
Oh, God. Wow.
I notice we have a prospective member. I hope she's not listening because she doesn't have her picture up from Candy Zimmerman.
You guys remember Eric Hopajoki's speech when he graduated? By chance, it got published in the paper. It was a big deal. And he went through all these things, and the whole speech was based around keg party spots, the hill, this, that, and the end. And he ended the speech by saying, our graduate, and the whole thing was, in my speech, I'm telling you where the party was. And he ended the speech by saying, and after graduation, we're going nowhere fast. And nowhere fast was the party spot just out of between Marefield and Cross Lake back in the woods on a snowmobile trail. But that's how the word got out to everybody where the party was going to be.
That is hilarious.
And they published the speech in the paper because they had such a positive response from the crowd.
That's great.
Eric was the full leader back then of those things.
All right. Well, it looks like we have about 24 people here. We're a little after noon. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So if you would please join me in reciting the four-way test. Of things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair
To all concerned?
Will it build good and better
Relationships.
Will it be beneficial
To all concerned.
All right, thank you. And oh shoot, it is March. And I am going to ask Sam Anderson, thank you for the thumbs up. You read my mind. So because it is March, we have somebody new doing our invocations. Sam, take it away.
Let's pray. Gracious God, we are so grateful for all of the blessings. We thank you for guiding us and leading us. We ask you, God, to give us wisdom as we go forward. Help us to put ourselves into the shoes of other people so that we can understand their struggles. And we can do all we can to be Rotarians in every aspect of our lives and help make other people's lives better through service above self. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sam. And by shoot, it's March, which has probably never come out of anybody's mouth ever before, was that we had a new person doing invocation. So with that, I'd like to do introduction of guests. Our past district governor, Rick Bricker. I do not see Rick on the call. Assistant district governor, Don Peterson. I do not see Don. And then just honoring those who serve at the district level, our executive secretary Gloria Mank, Jill Carlson, our district training committee member, and Don Ryan, our district crisis committee member. Do not see them on the call, but to say thank you for your service at the district level. Are there other guests? I do see Candace here.
Kirsten McKee is here from Port, but will be presenting today.
Great, thank you, Heather. And Candace, welcome. Are there any other guests? Just scrolling back and forth here. I do not see any. No kids, no dogs, no other guests. All right, Rotary related announcements. I do have a couple. First of all, thank you to everyone who has signed up on the Google Docs page for our volunteers. On March 16th, we will be doing the outreach program. We will be from 12 to 1:30 and helping the outreach program pack the meals. Right now, we have 20 people who have signed up, and we needed a minimum of 18 to do 3 lines. So I am really, really thrilled, and thanks to all of you who are able to join us for the event on the 16th. So noon to 1:30, there is still time to sign up if you would like to. So feel free, Heather, email with a link to a Google Doc or a Google form. Just all you have to do is go in there and type your name. So if you have not and still are able to, please do that. Another Rotary related announcement, and Heather, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to talk to you, but I had an opportunity to Katie Kaufman about the Easter egg hunt. So I am going to share my screen. And hopefully you are seeing the Easter egg hunt flyer. So our Easter egg hunt will be on April 3rd, again at Gregory Park. They are doing this in 3 waves. So they'll have a wave starting at 10, one starting at 11, and one starting at noon. Those waves will be 100 people per wave, divided into pods of 25. Again, trying to be safe and mindful about COVID. So trying to keep some distance. Registration has opened. I think it's actually just opened today. This event is free to the public, as it is always. So what Katie is looking for, what the Parks Department is looking for, is about 10 to 15 volunteers. It's going to be a little different this year because they will be broken into different categories. As you know, we usually just go there and we, Interact usually spreads out the eggs and we do the candy, and then people will stay and help clean up. Now they're going to ask people to do egg drops, candy bag filling, handing out bags. They would also like a couple of volunteers to do check-in and then clean up. And when they're talking about the egg drops, they're looking at people to help drop the eggs in wave 1, wave 2, and wave 3. So what I told Katie is that I would work with Heather and maybe we can do another Google Docs form where we can just have opportunities for people to in a slot where they would like to volunteer. So Heather, I'm assuming you're going to be the Easter Bunny?
I believe so, yes.
Woohoo!
I don't have the suit though, so I need to track that down.
Paula, do you have that?
No, but I'm betting it's probably still over at Crystal Cleaners. So check with Crystal.
Yes, I will. I just know that there was some talk about somebody using it last year for a different kind of event. So I'm assuming they took it back to Crystal if they did use it.
Yeah, I was not aware of that. So yeah, check with Rick over there.
Will do.
What day is that?
That is Saturday, April 3rd.
It's
And
a
it
fun
looks like-
event. Be sure to go. You'll see all, even with COVID, be sure to go, be a part of it.
Yeah, I think even more so with COVID, it's going to be, I think Parks and Rec Department would really appreciate more volunteers than we normally have, just because it's spread out through the day and just having to try to manage this differently because of COVID, so. All right, I think those are my Rotary related announcements. Does anybody else have any Rotary related announcements?
Well, I've been talking with Heather as far as the outreach project, perhaps afterwards, since we're so close to Roundhouse Brewery at Nisswa, that those that wish a beverage of some type, after we do our project, drive over to Roundhouse Brewery and check out their new location.
Throw an axe or two.
Yes, yes.
That's a great idea. I sure wish I could join.
So anybody, it's just a casual invite to have a beverage and look around and go home. I mean, they require a mask on entry, and they follow all the guidelines, so, which is good. I guess that's it.
Thanks, Mark. Any other Rotary related announcements?
I have one, Jennifer. The membership committee is reviewing Candace's application, so hopefully we'll be able to move that through quickly and get it to before the board here for the next meeting and get her formally inducted into our Rotary Club.
That's great, very exciting. And Candace, just so you know, our next board meeting is March 16th. So Todd, I will put that on the agenda.
Thank you.
Any other Rotary related announcements? All right, seeing none, I'll just do two quick announcements. Just to remind you that we do still have an opening on the board for New Generations Youth, and would encourage, actually now we have a New Generations Youth. If anybody is interested, please reach out to either me or Trevor. And then coming up, we're going to have a vacancy for Public Relations Committee as Dan is retiring. So again, either contact me or Trevor if you have any interest in that position. And then also just to make a plug for somebody looking for somebody who can line up our speakers. As Dan has mentioned, I can't remember, Dan, do you have speakers lined up till the end of June or the end of July? I can't remember. Dan, if you're
I believe he had said June before, and I think that's what I have on the schedule.
Here I am. Yes, everything's set up through the end of this Rotary year. So they're pretty easy to schedule, and I like to get ahead on them. And so if somebody wanted to start in April or May or sometime, that'd be fine. You'd start scheduling for July.
And I'm assuming, Dan, you probably have some ideas of things that you haven't had speakers for. Maybe you could pass that along. And if
I've got some ideas and lists, and there are people who only want to speak once we're back live, and there are people who only want to speak when we're not live. But I've got all that. So.
All right, thank you. I'll ask one more call for Rotary related announcements. Okay, seeing none, we'll move right into our Sergeant at Arms, Andy.
All right, well, everybody needs to watch out. This is my second Rotary meeting of the day. I joined the Central Lakes Club this morning for, they asked me, they had heard about a presentation that I've given here a few times on that Consumer Electronics show. So they asked me to give that, even though the Consumer Electronics show was virtual this year. So this is my second meeting of the day. What I did though, is I had to be subjected to their happy birthday ritual, which I said I was going to for sure tell on them about. So if you know anyone from that club, you should definitely ask them about what they do for the song and the actions and all this crazy stuff they do for that. But it's a pretty fun group. That was kind of my first experience with them. So that was a lot of fun. I'm going to share my screen quick and then we'll move on. So if anybody else wants to get ready to do theirs, I have a happy dollar, actually two. I've been helping out with coaching the Brainerd High School ski team in the last couple of years and assistant coaching with that in all my spare time. But this year, for the first time in school history, both the boys and the girls beat last year's, actually, I think, state champions to advance next week to the state tournament. So that was a pretty big win for those kids yesterday, which was a lot of fun to see. So those are 2 happy dollars for me, and I'll open it up to anyone else who wants to either just share happy anything or share their screen.
I'll give a happy dollar. That's Fort Lauderdale Beach behind me, where we were last Tuesday. A friend of mine purchased tickets for us to go down and spend a week down there. So it was a real great blessing to get away.
You brought the weather back, it sounds like, for the next week.
This is Paula. I'll throw in a buck. I'm happy. I got my second COVID vaccine, so I'm a happy camper. Another 10 days and I should be out of the woods to a degree. And Mark's got another week and he gets his.
Well, this is Dan. I got both Marcia and I got our second shots last week, so we're good. Just to let you know, the Lakeland PBS tower in Bemidji needs painting. It's 1,100 feet tall, and our GM said the cheapest bid he's gotten is $30,000. So you could probably paint it pretty quick if you just jumped off and, sprayed paint on the way down. I'm just saying it might be a good way to make some money.
The insurance is probably that much just to get up there.
Well, we're counting on people who don't think that deeply. Yeah. No,
So
I'll tell you.
So you might need multiple parties to do the painting after you lose.
Well, and then it does have to be red and white too at certain levels. So there's a level of complexity there. But he tells us we need new lights on that tower too. But that's it's really hard finding tower crews. All these cell companies are putting up new towers and switching to 5G. So I guess that's a good problem to have. Anyway, I'm retiring, but I'm not going to paint the tower.
I'll cut in and tell Dan that I actually know of a tower climber that fell off towers twice and lived. I don't know how he did it. There is one lucky man.
I'll say I'm getting my second part of the COVID on Thursday at the VA, and I'm going to jump up and down as I leave the building.
Well, this is Jennifer. I have a couple of happy dollars. As I mentioned last Tuesday, Mark had the rare weekend off. And so we got away for the weekend. We just went down to the cities, but it sure was nice to just get away, even if it was just 2 hours away. We had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with our kids. So with Mark's oldest and my oldest and my nephew. And I'm going to pay another happy dollar for the beautiful weather that we had on Saturday, because we had the opportunity to spend the day outside. We went to Hastings and bummed around there, and went to Minnehaha Falls, bummed around there. So just beautiful, beautiful weather. It's nice to have spring. And I'm going to pay my third happy dollar actually for my dad. My dad is 80 years old, and he just got his first COVID vaccine yesterday. And has already said that as soon as he gets his second one, he is going to drive up here after the 10 days. So I'm looking forward to seeing my dad.
Rod Rangan here. I'll try to share my screen to see if it works. But we ran across some swans back, and I kind of thought maybe they came back early because it was so cold in Texas. But it's March, 1st of March, and it's kind of nice to have a sign of spring.
That's right.
Can't get my.
Anyone else? All right. Well, thanks everyone. Have a good week.
Thank you, Andy. And now at some point, I'm curious, you'll have to share a little more about the birthday thing that Morning Rotary does. So I'm almost scared. And we don't want to give Trevor any ideas. Do
Oh,
we?
Don was on there this morning. I hadn't been subject to that happy birthday stuff. So that was something else.
Andy, you did a very good job this morning.
Thanks.
All right. Well, next up is our presentation. And so I'm actually just over to Heather Kelm is going to introduce her guest with her and tell us a little bit about Port. Thanks, Heather.
All right, thank you. Yes, I have Kirsten McKee. She's Port's program director along with, and she's going to help share a little bit more about Port. We also included some statistical data with the 2019 out of home placement and permanency division report that came out. It just came out in January. So there's a few updates from the 2017 report. So we will just get started with the slideshow here. All right, the computer's thinking about it. Okay, so who are we? Port. We provide children's residential services through a community-based group care model to at-risk youth. We teach them how to make healthy choices, and we've been providing services for nearly 50 years. We'll have our 50th anniversary next year. We work with youth who are 10 to 18 years old. They have a history of adverse childhood experiences. We've had some programs on here about ACEs. We'll touch base a little bit on that. Some behavioral concerns, personality disorders, chemical dependency, and we really pride ourselves in offering a safe environment for the youth. So we'll just touch base on the ACEs. So physical, sexual, emotional abuse, some mental health issues, divorce or separation, domestic violence toward a parent, incarceration of a household member. How ACEs is measured is, you get 1 point for each one. So a high ACEs score is usually in that 7 to 9 range. It's important to note that it is only counting by episode. It does not count the severity of the episodes. So all of the children at Port come with a ACEs score. So why do they come to Port? There's two main categories that the permanency division this report separates it out into, and that's caregiver reasons and child reasons. Now, when they're younger, this graph kind of represents, a timeline of age. So when they're one year old, 100% of them are caregiver reasons, which would make sense. And as the youth ages, it kind of turns a little bit more into child reasons outweigh the caregiver reasons. And there's, a couple of different reasons for that. One thing, a lot of them are tied back to those ACEs and that significant trauma that occurs in a child's life early on when it doesn't get addressed. So it comes out later as behavioral issues in teenagers. It's important to note that 80% of children in out-of-home placement are due to caregiver reasons, with only 20% being child reasons for out-of-home placement. Now, the caregiver reasons is up about 1% from 2017's numbers. Now, when we break apart the caregiver reasons and the child reasons, you can see, 30% of it is due to caretaker or parental drug abuse. High significant portion of it is alleged neglect, abuse, some mental health stuff in there. And then the child reasons, the number one reason for out-of-home placement is mental health. It's 7%. So when we look at this list of reasons, and we tie that back and we look at our ACEs here, every single one of these is in one of those high marks. So you can correlate that. A high ACEs score would mean, there's more out-of-home placement when you have a higher ACE score. And as I said, nearly 100% of the children who are referred to Port have a high ACEs score. They're significant trauma. So the youth at Port, where do they come from? Well, they come from all over the state, but the concentrated portion from Crow Wing County and the surrounding areas at about 50% of all placements coming from our area. And then when we break down the numbers between the children who do enter our facility, we're looking at 80% of those placements are coming from social services, and 20% of those are coming from behavior or from probation, sorry. So if we take a look back, we can tie 80% matches up with the statewide report on caregiver reasons versus child reasons. I thought that was interesting. So placements can be voluntary court ordered or like a 72-hour hold. Law enforcement might enter a home in the evening, determine that that home is not safe for the youth to be there, and they would seek a safe place for them to live, and that might be at Port. Within 72 hours, they are seen by the court system to determine, you know, whether they stay at Port, enter into foster care, whether that's family foster care or non-relative foster care. But usually there's something that happens almost immediately. So if you look at all of the children who are placed in out-of-home placements, you see that there were 8,010 placements made in 2019. Of those, a significant portion is all going to foster family homes and non-relative foster care. A little bit further down the list, you see the resident treatment center, group home, and juvenile correction facility. Port is licensed by the Department of Corrections under Minnesota Rule 2960 to provide the non-secure children's residential facility. But we would accept, you know, youth into there's the two main categories there, group home and juvenile correctional facility. So I will just talk a little bit about the pathway from out-of-home care to permanency. And then I'll hand it over to Kirsten to talk a little bit more about Port's actual program. So this is kind of just there's a lot of stuff packed into each one of these little boxes, because being placed in out-of-home care, there's a whole slew of reasons of why that might happen. But at some point, the determination is made that the child needs a safe place to live. They go into either Port or a facility like Port. The county does supervision and case management on their end. And on Port's end, we're working to develop that youth skills so that they can make healthy choices and kind of work through the program. That might be individual counseling, it might be family counseling, group therapy, anything that that youth needs to make them successful. And then we work on a transition home or a transition plan to get them back home. The majority of youth, we're looking for family reunification. And then I will hand it over to Kirsten.
So hi, I'm Kirsten McKee, Program Director at Port. I currently oversee the girls and boys facility. So all of our programming is based on cognitive behavior therapy. So that is thoughts, behaviors, emotions, and that's all tied together within our program. Heather, I'll have you click over. Thank you. So what service do we offer? So we offer a variety of different services such as our Port program. We do 30-day evaluations, short-term stays, 72-hour holds. So those are reasons why a kid might be placed for us, so like their program or type of stay. And then within that, they might receive a diagnostic assessment, therapy, med-evals. Everything's really individualized to what the need is of that youth placed with us, and as well as their timeline in which they're placed with us. Our days are structured from the time the kid wakes up to the time they go to bed. And we find that very helpful to the youth, especially youth with like reactive attachment disorder or different diagnosis, having that structure is very important. Most of our kids come from families and they have no structure. So within our day structure, there's lots of groups. So this list is just an overview of some of the groups that we have. Every day is kind of the same outline, but different groups for each day. So social skills, character building, problem solving, conflict resolution, law-related education. We do equine therapy, anger management, and the list just goes on there. So how does our program work? So like I said, every youth comes in, each youth has a different background. Everything is individualized to that youth, what their needs are, what their situation is. Are they going back home? Are they in a transition to another facility or foster family? So everything's individualized on what the need is for that kid. We also do the transitional services. So we want to make sure every kid is set up when they leave. And what I mean by that is, do they have therapy set in place if they're going to another foster home? Is that ready to go? Is their school ready to go? So there's not a lapse in time in which they discharge and they have to wait, 3 weeks until they meet with a counselor again. We like to have everything set up and ready to go for that youth, as well as education opportunities as well. So we have a lot of youth that come in and we see that they're behind on school credits. So we like to help them get ready or get caught up on their school credits. ISD 181 is absolutely wonderful for helping pull out records, getting the kids on track. It's amazing how many kids came through our program behind on credits and they're discharging our program all caught up. So Port being community-based services that we provide, these are just a list of different partners that we work with to provide these services to the youth. So Changing Strides, Nice Room and Associates, ISD 181, Central Health, We Are Clinic. So just the whole list here. We work with tons of different partners in the community. So we have a wonderful community to help meet all of these needs for the youth that we have and their families. So we do a ton of community service projects. So Port provides over 1,000 hours of community service hours annually. Even through COVID this last year, we were still able to do a ton of community service projects. We were a little bit more creative, but we volunteered at the Northland Arboretum. The youth go out to Confidence Learning Center every week, Habitat for Humanity, Brainerd Community Action. We do Adopt a Highway, Mid-Minnesota Women's Center. As far as like other organizations too might give us a call and say, hey, we got this project. Can the kids come out and do that? So we are always open to ideas for community service, but we do a ton of community service and it's built into our program. So every week we have some sort of community service project.
Okay, so I just wanted to share one story. Port serves over 200 youth each year. Megan's story isn't necessarily unique. There's a lot of kids that come to us with very similar backgrounds. When Megan was 2 years old, social services had stepped in. Her home was not a safe environment for her. Her dad was in and out of prison and not really there a whole lot. Mom had chemical use issues and abuse issues, so Grandma stepped in to help out. She took care and custody of Megan. And when Megan, became a teenager, she started displaying some behavioral issues. She was just kind of acting out. She was being rude. Just some really significant issues. So they determined that it would be best for her to go live in an out-of-home placement. But that was after they found out that Megan was being sexually abused by one of Grandma's boyfriends. And they could relate those behavioral issues due to that significant trauma in her life. So Grandma didn't think that that facility was the best place for Megan, so she pulled her out of care. And then she was sent to another facility Megan she was hanging out with some unruly girls, and they ended up inciting a riot at that facility, which is pretty significant. So Megan then transferred to another placement. And at that point, and throughout her history, she had a history of running away. So she'd run away from grandma. She ran away from the first and second placement. She ran away from the third placement time and time and time again. And it just seemed like it was really hard to find, the help that Megan needed. And, each kid is individual, and they actually called Port. They said, we've got this girl, this is her history and background. They didn't tell us about the rioting part, but they told us about everything else. And one of the things that if you work at Port, you have to have hope. And so we have hope for every single child who's going through and suffering, or, with any kind of trauma, that at some point something's going to click or something's going to change. And it happened for Megan when she came to Port. She had this long history of running. She was running, I think, every day from the previous facility, and they determined that they couldn't keep her safe anymore. So she comes to Port. She presents much like her history explained. She was very rude, accusatory. What do you want? They put up this wall or this front, and sometimes it takes a little while to get that wall down a little bit and start working on some of the individual stuff and the trauma that Megan had gone through. We set her up with individual counseling, family therapy. Grandma did a lot of work on her end. Megan did a lot of work on hers. Our primary counselors worked with Megan. They immediately noticed that Megan needed some help with communication. So those were some goals that the primary counselor set up, just small ones, whether it was daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, whatever it was, to try and get Megan some sense of success, even if it was the smallest thing. And eventually we started noticing Megan's behavior, just in her attitude and everything, just kind of turn. And she kind of, I don't know, it was really amazing transformation. The social worker and grandma even commented, wow, she's really working on her communication skills. She's got so much respect for adult and authority figures. And Megan never once ran from Port's program. So, I think even if we can help one person, that's what we're here for. And it's just amazing that we get the opportunity to help so many kids throughout every year. And like I said, this is just one story. It's not necessarily unique. We deal with a lot of kids with a lot of those significant ACEs. And then we have contact information for Kirsten and I, if anybody's interested. And then I think primarily we'd want to open it up to questions, because we know a lot about Port, but we don't know what you guys know or don't know. So,
Are you the only facility in the state, or are there others?
no, there's numerous facilities in the state. We're the only one in Brainerd that's licensed in this type of way. But we belong to a membership organization called Aspire MN. And there's a lot of facilities similar to Port, but we all specialize or do kind of different things.
Heather, I have a question. This is Jennifer. A couple of things. How long have you been with Port, and what is your background on doing this type of work?
Okay, well, my journey with Port started about 17 years ago. I applied for a position as a part-time cook to put me through college. And I don't know, within a month of working there, they said, we need somebody to work on the floor. Somebody called in sick, can you do it? So I grabbed a resident handbook and thought, okay, if these kids need to know these rules, are the first ones I need to know, because they'll call me out on it, or they'll try and get away with it or whatever. So I read through the resident handbook. It's like, here we go. So I kind of worked my way up through Port, doing nearly every single position there. And I, went to college. I initially started my education to become a chemical engineer. But working with these kids and learning about it more and more, it's just like I said, that whole helping part and that hope. And if you can change somebody's life for the better, I think that's way more meaningful than being a chemical engineer. No offense to any chemical engineers out there. But there was a time, so I got a mini MBA through the St. Thomas Executive Leadership Program. And we actually had a day where we went out to Rutgers for some, a learning retreat type thing. And I walked in there and there was a program going on in one of the rooms. And there's all these, diagrams and graphs up on the presentation slide. And I looked at what group it was, and it was the Minnesota Association of Chemical Engineers. And I paused there for a minute and I thought, thank God I'm going to that room. So carried on with the rest of the training. I also have a bachelor's degree in organizational behavior with minors in abnormal psychology and marketing. So, and then I've been the executive director at Port for 5 years now.
This is Paula, Heather. I'm curious about how long the kids stay. Is it most of them short or is it longer?
It kind of depends on if we took all of our different programs and took all of our kids and piled that data all together, our average length of stay is around 45 days. A 72-hour hold is about 3 days, a 30-day evaluation about 30, but our general program runs about 4 to 6 months, but it all depends on individual factors in that youth's program or their goals. And a really important feature is how willing they are to work towards those goals.
Heather, this is Jim. Where does your funding come from, or how does it work?
That is a very good question. So we have like a per diem rate. And so we bill counties for each day the youth is in placement, and the counties turn and break that down and they pull it from different funding sources. And one of the main sources would be called Title IV-E funding. I'm not an expert on it, but they draw down from the federal government to help pay for those placements. And then, so then that just covers, like room and board, kind of the necessities, medical, but we do some fundraising for any of our recreation equipment. We like to take the kids on fun outings and try to give them some sense of a normal childhood experience as possible. So if they're able to go to some event or something like that, those are all things that we raise money for.
Heather, this is Dan. I think PORT is an acronym for something. What is it? Do you know?
I do. So originally when PORT was established, it was, they worked with the adult male population, and PORT stood for Probation Offenders Rehabilitative Training. So what they did is they took qualified candidates from the jails and prison systems and worked with the adults to try and get them some skills and things to successfully transition back into community living. So it wasn't, I think it was in the right before 1980, I want to say like 78. So they might have done the services for maybe 5 years where they transitioned solely to working with juvenile males. And then in the early 80s, they added the girls group home program. So we do have 2 facilities in Brainerd now, one for boys and one for girls. Buford, did you have a question? I think you're muted.
Oh, I'm learning how to use this machine. How large a staff do you have, and what types of requirements do you have for their employment?
What was the first question?
How large a staff do you have? How many employees?
Okay, PORT employs about 30 people. And for direct care staff, the requirement is a high school diploma. So we take care of all the training on our end. No staff works alone on any shift until they've had at least 80 hours of training with shadow shifts. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And then we have primary counselors. They are required to have a 4-year bachelor's degree in social services or a related field.
Well, thank you.
Heather, this is Pete. Do you, I know you belong to a larger group in Minnesota. How many kids are in the state of Minnesota in this type of program? And the second part is, what kind of geography does your facility serve?
Okay, so the information pulled from the 2019 data, there was over 8,000 placement episodes with just over 7,000 youth. So sometimes they might experience more than one placement, just like Megan's story where she went from one to another. So there's about 8,000, but if you remember, a huge chunk of that is in family foster care, and then foster care that's non-relative. So the population that Port serves is a relatively small number of those out-of-home placements. And youth can be placed at Port from all over the state, but the majority of youth are coming from, the central Minnesota area. And we don't take any out of state placements.
I've got a question. So what type of volunteer opportunities do you have at the group homes?
Okay, we don't have many because of background checks, licensing, things like that. But we do have groups that come in and present to the kids. The Zonta group, the women there, they do a wonderful job. They do a group once a month for the girls. They come in and kind of teach some like professional job type things. And maybe Kirsten, you can talk a little bit more to Zonta and the volunteer opportunities than I can.
Yeah, so we have Zonta that comes in, that's just for the girls facility. We have the We Are Clinic that runs a group for our youth. We have Lutheran Social Services, we'll do independent living skills. With COVID, all of these agencies have been wonderful with being creative with Zooms, so we haven't been missing any of these groups this last year where a lot of other things have been canceled. So ILS has been doing a group for our youth. Master Gardener program, each summer we do a garden at the boys' house and girls' house, and we'll have somebody from the Master Gardener program come in and help. Once or twice a week, they'll come in and work with our kids and teach them different skills around the garden. That's primarily the volunteers we have come in. So like Heather said, again, it's coming in and primarily doing a group with our kids. And we do volunteer activities out, like going to Confidence Learning Center, Northland Arboretum.
Are you seeking volunteers for anything?
We are always open. So like if your job organization's able to provide some sort of group or learning opportunity for the kids, we're always willing and open to different ideas. As far as like someone coming in to just hang out with the kids, we can't necessarily have that. Another thing too is we didn't touch base on is we have been working right prior to COVID, we had started a mentorship program with Central Lakes College Athletic Department and Lutheran Social Services. That's pretty cool. We got it started and then it had to be on hold with COVID, and we're hoping to resume in the next couple months. But that looked like a athlete would get partnered with one of the youth that we have at the facility, primarily youth that would be with us longer term. So we actually had this started and had about 5 kids in this program, and it was just so much fun to see the kids. They got partnered with, say, someone off of the football team, and they each had their own individual mentor, and they got to go like play basketball or go throw football. And they met with their mentor once or twice a week. So we're hoping to resume that. So it was kind of like a volunteer in a way. They had to complete some background information to come in and do that.
Yeah, so if anybody's looking for a volunteer opportunity, we would also do, we'd consider like if you wanted to come in and help with the gardening, if we could set it up so that it was like every week at the same time, as long as you'd be willing to do the background check and do some of that training. There would be at least 40 hours of training that you would have to do along with that. So that's where it kind of gets a little bit stuck. But if we can provide more supervision when we have a volunteer, something like that might be able to work out. We used to have a fellow come over and do some spirituality type stuff, and I don't remember what church he was affiliated with, but he'd come over and it was very casual. He would play basketball with the kids for a little while, and then they would go and kind of talk about more scripture and things like that. And it was completely optional. But he had to go through a lot of training for that. And then, but it worked out nice because he was a long-term volunteer. Any other questions?
Heather, this is Rod Osterloh. At one time, I think that you had asked for some things for the kids. The thing that stands out in my mind, because I have a bunch of suitcases around that I really probably should get rid of. But are there things that that could be provided to Port to help those kids out?
Yeah, so suitcases are huge. Most of the kids come in with their either no belongings at all, and then we work with our community partners and our donations to get them clothes and boots and everything that they need. And then when kids do come in with stuff, a lot of times they have a garbage bag or a trash bag. And one thing we don't want to do is ever send a youth home or to their next place with their belongings in a garbage bag. You know, sometimes I don't want a youth to think that their stuff is trash, therefore they are trash. That is certainly not the case. So if we can put that in a suitcase, a duffel bag, even those Rubbermaid totes, we've sent youth home with totes full of stuff before too. That's always a need. Recreation, like I said, our per diem rate doesn't cover recreation. So basketballs, footballs, volleyballs. And then the kids are really into some board games. So they're actually looking for some specific games right now. Apples to Apples, Monopoly. There's a card game, Monopoly, that they're really interested in. Apparently the girls have one and the boys want one. So, you know, there's a couple of ideas there. We can always use hygiene supplies, shampoo, conditioner, underwear, bras without wires in them, clothes, all kinds of stuff. Any other questions? I apologize for losing my voice earlier. It is not COVID related. We took our kids to the swimming pool in the area, so there was a lot of chlorine, and I think that was causing issues. So
That and allergies with the snow melting. Well, I just want to say thanks, Heather, and thanks, Kirsten, for presenting today. Heather, we see you all the time, and it's really interesting to hear what you do on a day-to-day basis. So thank you so much for taking your time and teaching Rotary a little bit more about Port. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
All right, is there anything else to come before Rotary?
Well, there's pets training coming up today and next week.
Thank you, Don.
For leaders of the club, I'm reminding you.
How do we get into it, Don? That's been a question that's been out there. Is there a Zoom link or a?
Yeah, yes, there is. I suppose I could forward to you, or
you know what? Yeah, Jesse, I thought Gloria had.
I didn't get, you know, email filters are funny, but I did not hear back. And I know Trevor was asking the same question.
Okay, let me find it. I know Gloria did respond.
She did. Okay.
I'll grab it and I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
when you're doing it, send it to Trevor too, please.
Yes.
And anybody
I will.
else that wants it.
I will do that. Anything else? All right. Well, you all have a wonderful Tuesday and a great week, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, Jen.